Hey there, doing a recap video for Castles and Crusades campaign. This is session 30. We're at our gaming weekend, my group's 8th annual gaming weekend. This is a big session. I ran this actually yesterday on Saturday. I had a lot of players in this game. We had, I think, 8. We had, here's the list right here. We had Erwan, Agrax, Artemis. Artemis is a new character. He's a replacement for my friend Thad's character, Risker, who got killed. Cosmo, the halfling rogue. My son's character, Lork. Urax or Unax. I keep mispronouncing. This is a new character. That character and this Erwin character actually played in a one-shot that my son ran for Castles and Crusades the day before on the first day of our gaming weekend. And that character, that game took place in my homebrew setting, just south of where the party, my campaign's taking place. And it is canon in my campaign. So that was cool. They ended up merging their characters into the session I ran today. Or I ran yesterday. It started off in, excuse me, they started off after the last session. They're back in Arden. And we started off with scene with Barry, who's in his tower, and he's awoken by this feeling, this cold, this presence, and there's 2 bugbear assassins coming in his window, and then this basically this undead entity appears before him, and he's immediately scared because he's sleeping and he's not prepared for any of this. But this undead entity ends up protecting him and defending him against these bugbears. So that was kind of a thing. And he put some stuff together, my player, my friend Dave. I talked about how he felt this coldness that stayed with him even after that encounter. And he had experienced that coldness before in the Tower of Isran Muse in an much earlier session. And he asked about that. Is that the same? And yes, it is. So he may have some insight on what that's all about. Then we switched and we went to my son, Lork, his character. And there was another assassinated. He's in his cabin outside of Arden with his mentor. And a bunch of these bugbear assassins bust in, and there's a little fight that ensues. A lot of this was done narratively and with some dice rolling, but it wasn't like hard and fast rules. It was more of setting the tone for the game and stuff. And it's a technique I've experienced in other games and kind of experimenting with Castles and Crusades, and it worked really well. We used it a lot in this session, which I'll get to later. They then shift after that aftermath. There's a council meeting, a smaller council meeting with the chieftain of the town on the battle plan to take back the Iredale Stronghold. And Lork is tasked with leading a team through some caves or a mine that they're pretty sure leads into the stronghold itself, while the rest of the forces are going to be in a big pitched battle at the gates of the stronghold. So they gather up their stuff and they depart. A couple-day journey. They get into the Thornwood Forest, which is where Iredale Stronghold is located. And that's a couple-day journey as well. They have to camp overnight. During that camp, there is a random encounter with a goblin patrol that they handily dispatch. And then they decide, and part of that came about from a random dice roll and the way they set up camp. It was a little more obvious than it probably should have been. But they handled it pretty easily. And then the next day, they move on. That morning, they move on. And as they're Lork and Artemis, is also a ranger. They're leading the party towards this mine entrance. And as they're getting closer to it, they start to hear the sounds of battle. And they move up and they see this giant figure fighting a bunch of bugbears and goblins. And the figure, I described it as looking pretty much like this Reaper miniature. And it easily beats those bugbears and goblins, and then it spots the rest of the party. And there's a little confrontation there, and they determine that this is a fbow. And they negotiate with it. She basically lets them know that they're trespassing on fbow land, and that's why she killed the bugbears and the goblins. And they get the distinct and accurate that's a possibility for them as well. So they do some talking, and they wisely ask for permission to cross the lands. She tells them, well, I don't have the right to give you that permission. You need to talk to this person called Dag, which turns out to be the fbow king. My fbows are very much like old school fbows. They're not what you see in current editions of D&D, which in my opinion is a travesty. They're very much like giant Vikings, and they're also inspired by a series of novels I read that heavily featured giants. And the novel series was written by an author named John Gwynne, and it's excellent. It took a lot of inspiration on my current setting area from his books. So she takes them back to the fbow lair isn't the right word, but where their king is, and they meet with the king, and Barry actually kind of leads the negotiations in this, which is wise because he has a really good charisma, and charisma is his prime. And he does negotiate permission for them to pass into their lands to get to the mine entrance. He tries to negotiate the fbows, helping them in the fight, but he didn't roll as well, so he failed that. But they did get permission to go into the mine and press land. So the fbow, her name is Branka. Branka brings them back to the mine entrance. So they get to the mine, which is this here was the mine. Well, this part was the mine. And this is an abstract thing too. This was actually much longer, but there was really no need to build it out that way. So it's kind of abstract. So you have Cosmo and Lork going scout in, and they come across this guy. This hill giant is in there. They come across him. So they come up with this plan. Cosmo and Lork remain hidden. I think Artemis actually went up too, maybe, because somebody goes back and gets the rest of the party. I don't remember who it was. Then the rest of the party, because they're not going to be stealthy no matter how hard they try, they just tromp up here and try to... Their plan is to draw the giant down to here to them, and then have Cosmo and Lork ambush him from the side. But the giant, I mean, he is stupid, but he's not completely stupid. He sees this big gathering down here, and instead of just running down there, he starts chucking rocks. And he throws a rock, which was, the dice rolls were not on my side, so he wasn't super effective. So he got a round off of the rocks, didn't hit anybody, and then the party closes on him. This I had intended to be a fairly difficult fight, but in my planning, I didn't really plan on the fact that I had 8 players. So he wouldn't have really made it past a single round of combat with all the hits he got. But I messed around on the fly a little bit with his hit point totals to give him a little bit. I think he made it like 2 or 3 rounds. He actually never really did much damage to anybody. He might have got a hit in, or maybe 1 hit, but they finished him off fairly quickly. They moved on to here. This also became an abstract thing where this was literally miles of tunnel until they got to this point. When they get to this door, it's locked. And Cosmo's been having a real tough time in the sessions. My buddy Chris, the dice have just not liked him at all when it comes to combat. So he's been a little frustrated, I think, because the dice rolls haven't been going that great for him when they're fighting. However, when it comes to doing thiefy stuff, he's actually been really, really good and helpful. He's able to pick this lock and get him in here. So they come into this, and they quickly discover they're in a dungeon area. And in this dungeon here, in this cell here, the other ones these 2 are empty, but in this one, they find Ronan, their missing friend Ronan, and they realize for the first time he's alive. He's in very bad shape, badly beaten, tortured. So Cosmo gets that cell open again, and they get him out of there, and they start throwing some healing potions into him, because they'd all been, when they were in Arden before they left, grandmother, who is Ajax's grandmother and Sprawl's grandmother, gives them all healing potions to take, and gives Ajax a little extra because it's her grandson. So they get him back up and running. They give him back some of his gear, which they'd been carrying, that they took off the bugbear sergeant that they killed in the last session. So Ronan gets his sword back and something, but they also had, one of the characters gave him a bow that they weren't using anyway, so I think it was Artemis. So they get to, then they want to move on. Ronan doesn't know where Sprawl is, other than they took him. He really has a distortion of time because he's in really, really bad shape. He's basically the equivalent of having 1 hit point, almost on death, getting ready to just go out altogether. So they don't know where he is, but they got to find him. So they get this door open. I think that was locked too. Cosmo opened that door. They come into this hall here, and this hall has bugbears in it that are guarding this room here. A fight ensues, and during that fight, more bugbears come out of here. They come out of this room. This door opens, some more bugbears come out. And this turned out to be a much more difficult combat for them. I was pretty happy with how this combat turned out. And in the midst of this battle, they're working through all these bugbears. We had one that tried to flee up the stairs, but he was taken down by a magic missile spell from Barry, so he couldn't go. He was going to go and get more people, so Barry stopped that from happening. When this door is open, though, in the midst of this battle, towards the tail end of the fighting out here, they hear this, Agrax hears this cry of pain and anguish, and he knows that's coming from his brother. And sure enough, in here is Agrax, and he's being tortured over this flame here that was all lit up. And he's being in a cage, and he's being hung over that, and he's got burns and stuff. So 3 of them immediately. We had Agrax, Lork, and Pounder charge in here, and quickly followed by Artemis, and the fighting ensues. And then they're confronted by 2 bugbears and this guy. This is an old pre-painted WizKids miniature that I've had forever that I thought looked really cool. And Agrax actually goes toe-to-toe with him. And he's pretty tough. Like, he actually, in the fight, he came very, very close to dropping Agrax. I think Agrax down to like 1 or 2 hit points before he finally was able to drop that guy. During this battle, we did a lot of line of sight stuff. Like, I try to mix in a little bit of realism. So like, if you're looking down and there's like a billion miniatures between you and whatever you're trying to shoot at, the rules might not prevent it, but I'm like, you can't even really see that guy. And that happened out here as well. I like to interject that stuff, and my players are great with it. They understand and agree. Like, yeah, I can't really even see that guy. This battle's going on here. We have Barry and Brea and Unax, who is also a wizard, played by one of my players named Zach, who's been a longtime member of our group. He plays Valrin, but he didn't have Valrin's character sheet with him, so he just played his wizard from my son's one-shot, which worked out great. And Cosmo are all in here. Well, they see a reoccurring character pops out. For a reoccurring character for some of these guys is, can I get that to focus a little bit? Come on. Maybe not. This is Gurk. There we go. There we go. That's Gurk the Witch. And Ronan has a lot of experience with her. I think Lork had made it. Lork and Sprawl might have seen her once, had some adventures where she was private. But she has been the one that's been leading the torture in here. So she has had firsthand she's been torturing Ronan and Sprawl. She pops out and casts Web in here, and this buttons it up pretty good. The only people that make their saves are Brea and Cosmo. So they're able to act. If they move, they have to make saves, so they wisely stay in place. But Unax and Barry, they don't, so they're stuck in the way the web spell works. They can't cast any spells that have somatic components, so they're kind of stuck in there. Made them ineffective. That also made these guys that were out here, which was Erwan and I don't remember who else was out here. Fenris. This is Erwan's bear companion. There's a couple other characters out here. They couldn't do much out here because the webs fill this. They can't even see in that room. So that was kind of eliminated, broke them up. And I got some comments from some of my players like that was like, who run games themselves. They were like, that was like really good. Like, you really like cut us off and stuff, and that worked out really well. I was happy with that. This battle in here, like I said, is pretty tough. They each all have foes, and they're trying to get them down, and this guy with the hood is just beating the crap out of Agrax, and at one point, like, came really close to dropping him to, it was like -9. But he had actually forgotten to add like a bonus to his AC, so he was able to actually, the second hit didn't hit him. He got 2 attacks. That guy got 2 attacks per round. They're in the middle of this fight. They're dealing with these guys and Gurk back here. Artemis is trying to circle around this pillar to get to her, and she hits him with basically a ray of enfeeblement, which hurts him some more. She's taking a little bit of damage because they are people that can shoot from in here are shooting at her, and they're doing well. But in the midst of all that, I don't know where it went. Oh, here it is. This, from the rafters, which they didn't see because they didn't really take time because they rushed in there, this giant spider came crawling in down behind Lork. And the only thing that saved Lork in that fight was he has a ridiculous armor class. And I try as I might, I could not get a hit on him. But it was enough to put some fear into the players when they saw that big hairy spider come down. This is a Reaper miniature. It might have been from the last Kickstarter that I painted up. It's pretty cool. Just got some spider webs on it that I made from old linen dryer sheet. And the base I did myself. But yeah, so it was a really tough fight. Like, that was one of the tougher fights in the game, really. But eventually they're victorious, and Sprawl is rescued as well. He's in just as bad a shape as Ronan. They give him some equipment, but he's in no real condition to battle. So they kind of shove them. They already have like a massive eight-person party, so they shove him to the back, and with Ronan, and like, we'll take care of this. That led the game. We shifted then to, they go upstairs, and they had been tasked by Colin Mormac, the chieftain of Arden. Lork had been tasked with getting the gates of the stronghold open. That was his job. So they knew they had to get to the gate. So they get up, they find one room, they search the upper level of the stronghold a little bit, and we did this theater of the mind. They find the main hall, like would have been the audience hall for whoever ruled the stronghold back when it was active. And off that, they find another room, which is like would have been like the Lord's chamber. And in that, they actually find quite a bit of treasure that was locked up. Again, Cosmo gets them into the room and gets the thing open and is able to get him the treasure, and which was cool. And then my friend Chris, who plays Cosmo, he's like, well, I want to search for secret doors and stuff. And I'm like, okay. So he starts doing that, and he finds one above board. I had at the time no idea that there was a secret door there, but I thought that was a rather cool idea. So we went with that, and that led to a secret tunnel and passage that actually leads outside the stronghold. So they get outside the stronghold. From their position, they don't have a great view of the front, but they do hear the sounds of battle. So they know the fight outside has started. So they're like, we got to get out there. We got to do our job. So they start making their way towards the front to get out of the stronghold. And it's a big stronghold. There's actually the keep area, but then there's like where there's like a little bit of the village, and then outside the walls there's more of the village, and it's all the buildings for the village areas are ruined because this place hasn't been active in like 200 years almost. Lork comes up with my son comes up with the idea for Lork. He asks Barry, he's like, hey, can you still make me invisible, or can you still cast invisibility? And he's like, yeah, I can, I have that spell. So he's like, I will go to the gates, you guys basically cause a distraction. So with Lork's boots of elven kind and invisibility, he gets to the gates no problem. He doesn't make any sound, and they can't see him. The party decides, the rest of them decide that they're going to go along. They have access to the walls. They're going to go to the left wall and work their way around, clearing some of the troops that are left up there to get to the gatehouse themselves. So this is where we kind of shifted how I ran the game a little bit. I kind of got away from in this. It was all theater of the mind. I did have stuff to build like the gatehouse, but I just didn't feel like it was a good time to do it. I didn't want to break up the what was going on just to set up terrain and stuff. So we did it all theater of the mind, and it was more of a narrative focus. I did have them make rolls, and those rolls kind of influenced how it looked, but like Pounder's leading the charge along the wall, and he rolls and he does well, and so we just kind of I gave him narrative control, the player Steve, on how that looked, and we talked about how like he was just moving along with everybody behind him, and he's just smashing people going across the wall, trying to make his way to the gatehouse. Lork gets into the gatehouse. There's bugbears there. I had to make a few. He doesn't really have to make too many rolls because he automatically is silent and he's invisible. And the way invisibility works in Castle Crusades, you have to attack for that to go away. So you can do other things, but it doesn't disrupt it. So he makes his way precariously through the towers and he has to actually cross over to the left tower, the right tower, to get to where the mechanism for the gatehouse is. And he does that. He has to go across where the murder holes are, and he narrowly. I did make him roll to get by the two people, the bugbears that were there waiting to drop stuff down the murder hole, which he does, and then he gets in the next room. The next room, there's some bugbears in there shooting arrows out at the battle, but there's also the mechanism and the cogs and stuff that run the gate. So he starts kicking trying to break it, which makes noise, but they still can't see him because the way the spell works, it doesn't break his invisibility. They come over, and then eventually breaks it, and then he decides to break his invisibility, and he shanks one of the bugbears, and he just started working through them. Most of it was narratively done. And they were very successful based on, they did make some rolls. Their rolls were good. I was trying not to do a blow by blow for this giant battle that was going to ensue, because it just wouldn't have been fun, and it would have been less entertaining, I think. And so did they. They thought the same. So that happens. The rest of the party reaches the left tower. They get in. They start fighting the bugbears that are in there. Meanwhile, just before they get in there, Lork is cleaned out. He's done what they need to do. The gates are open. Now he's seen outside like the different forces. You have, I wish I had it down here. I have a painted version of it from my buddy Carl that is here, because he wanted some painted like that. But we have Lord Bolg, and he's on his Chimera, and I have one upstairs of him on it, but I don't have it right with me, unfortunately. He's out there in the throw. There's like hundreds and hundreds of people out, and there's a big pitched battle, and you can see different forces. You have Conall Mormac leading a force trying to get to Bolg. You have Regan, Melisandre, his shield man, and the leader of the Wolves of Arden, leading another element trying to get to Bolg. And then you have this contingent of heavily armored dwarves from the Helgrim Enclave within Arden, and they're doing this wedge formation trying to reach the gate. And Lork he's done what he needs to do, and he's going out there to help. So he just runs out the gate and is heading towards the battle. And the battle's about 400 and, I don't know, I think it was just at the tail end of 450 feet, I think, away, because that factors in later. But I just described it as a couple hundred yards away. So he's just sprinting out to this battle. Party sees that, but they go in and they clear out the tower for the most part and take that over. And some of them start to go out to help too. And it became a very narrative thing, a much more narrative thing, because I'm obviously not going to run a battle with 400 different characters. So we did it narratively. Lork trying to fight his way. He meets the dwarven wedge formation that's coming to him. They see him, and they kind of help part the way. But then there's just so many bodies, and the way I described it to him is when he got out there, is like he's never ever been in a battle like that before. Like it's just oppressive bodies and just combatants everywhere. Like it was something that he was very unfamiliar with. He's a skirmisher. He's a ranger. He's a Wolf of Arden. He is not used to this form of combat. So he's trying to he sees Regan. Regan reaches Bolg, and they're fighting, and Regan throws a spear, and it hits the Chimera enough so it hurts it enough so it rears up, and Bolg tumbles off the back, and then Bolg meets him, in combat. And so Regan and Bolg are fighting, and Lork's trying to get there, and he looks across the battlefield, and he sees Conall on the other side, and Connell's trying to get there to help, and then there's that moment where none of them can get there to help, and Bolg kills Regan, the leader of the Wolves of Arden, runs him through with his sword, and he gets back up on his mount, and Barry from the tower or the battlements, he, at the very extreme range, and the way I explained it to him, he wanted to cast acid arrow at him. And I told him, I told the player, I said, you think your character believes that he's not even sure, like, it's so far away, he's not even sure it's in range. But you're going to do it anyway. And he does it anyway. And he successfully hits him. So it describes his arrow, acid arrow hits, and he hits Bolg right in the side of the face. And my buddy Dave made the rolls, successful hit, very good damage for acid arrow. So they know now, they're like, because he jumps on the Chimera and he sees at this point, at the same time, the dwarves have reached the gate and they've retaken the walls. So Bolg no longer has control of the stronghold, which I had described earlier, mostly empty because all the warband that he commanded was out fighting. He'd left some people on the walls. They're now done. So he knows he's lost the stronghold. And now he's been badly injured, and he knows that he's lost this, and he retreats. So he gets back on his Chimera, which this Chimera doesn't have wings. It actually has, I think I described it in a previous video, but it has a serpent tail, it has a lion's head, and a goat head, but it doesn't have wings or anything. It's it's based on the miniature that I found for it, which I thought was pretty cool. And he rides off to the north to escape, and I described him, and he gets away. It was a really cool moment. I really liked mixing in the narrative stuff. We're here at our gaming weekend, so some of us are crashing out here. We've been here all weekend, so we've had a lot of great discussions about how to run games. And one of the things that I've experienced through playing in other groups is like that narrative, giving players narrative control over things for a little bit. I think that's a really great tool, and it's something I'm going to do more in games. It's maybe a little different to some older school gamer. I'm an older school gamer, but I really like that stuff. I don't want to do it all the time, but I think at certain points in a game, it's super helpful, and I think it adds to the what's happening at the table. And players felt the same way. I went around the room, like I said, I had eight players, big room. We went around, and everybody got a moment. And then we tied it in at the end. I wanted to do like a good closure because this is a big moment in the campaign where they've now regained Iredale Stronghold. Arden is going to be a stronger place for it. It's going to open up some other possibilities because one of the things they learned about the fbows is in the past, and they learned this from Branka, in the past and they learned it from King Dag, that when Iredale Stronghold was once occupied by humans, there was like not a treaty, but there was an agreement. You didn't cross into our lands, we didn't cross into yours. The fbows are very territorial. They very much defend their land. But if you leave them alone, they don't bother you. So there was a peace there, and they want to see that done. So I think maybe we'll see down the road some more interaction with their fbows a little bit. They were pretty neat. I had a lot of fun role-playing that out. A lot of it was done on the fly as I went. I had some rough ideas, and Branka was placed in the game at the beginning, but like that all developed on the fly, which is where some of the best stuff comes from, in my opinion. But at the end of it, they come, they have a big celebration, with Connell talking to like everybody that, a large crowd gathered in front of the stronghold about everybody that fought and helped and celebrating the victory. But then later on, we brought it in a little bit, and there was a smaller one that was held in the main audience hall of Iredale Stronghold. And Connell was there, the party members were there, and a few other key people. And during that, the body of Regan Scrandon was there, and they celebrated him as being a hero for Arden, and always just talking about his character and just how well he held that position, and showing tribute and honor to him. And at the end of that ceremony, Connell Mormac, the chieftain of Arden, he made Lork his new headman and gave him the mantle of the Wolves of Arden that showed that he was the leader of the Wolves of Arden, which I thought was really neat. I think all the players thought that was pretty cool. My son thought it was pretty cool. And there was another small scene we did where Melisandre Scrandon, who runs Scrandon Hall in the town of Arden, she approached Lork and just, she was very upset. Obviously her brother died, but she just, she wasn't upset with him. She just wanted, spoke to him about making sure that he wore that mantle with the same pride and honor and that her brother did. And I thought it was a really cool scene. I think everybody did, and we enjoyed it. And they kind of closed it out there. Really great session. A lot of fun. A long one. I'm sure I've forgotten a whole bunch of stuff. I mean, we played around 6 or 7 hours. The session was. So if you hear anybody talk about how nobody wants to play long games, some people don't, but there's a lot of people that still do. We had a blast. It was a lot of fun. I'm losing my voice because we've been doing a lot of playing and talking this weekend. So we're going to do some more playing this afternoon. And then we're snowed in here now. If you look outside, winter in Maine. We just got our first real snowstorm in southern Maine. It's still coming down. So a few of us are snowed in here. But we're going to play some Dragonbane this afternoon. I ran some on Friday to fill a spot because we had a spot open up. So I ran some Dragonbane, which is a great system. Love it. I've been playing it myself. So I ran it for these guys. And for the rest of us, we're going to finish out today and play some Dragonbane and hang out and get through the storm. But yeah, so that's a very chaotic recap of session 30 of our campaign, Castles and Crusades. Any of this stuff you got questions about or comments, I look forward to it. Most of this, almost all of this is Dwarven Forge, pretty much, with the exception of these pillars. I made those. These are from a video I watched on Black Magic Craft. Really good video on making pillars. I got a whole bunch of those, and I often forget to use them, but they're super handy. So if you want to learn how to do that, I would check out his channel. But yeah, this is what we had going. Like I said, I had a bunch of other terrain, so I could build out the whole gatehouse. I don't know, at the moment I didn't feel like I wanted to do it. So, and I think it worked for the best not doing it. So sometimes that happens. So don't get, advice I would give is don't always get married to your ideas or terrain or whatever. Some people see this stuff and they're like, well, what if your party goes left instead of right? I don't care. I don't care. I've literally had tables bigger than what you see here, filled with terrain, covered, so they have no idea what it is, and they go in the opposite direction of where that stuff is, and they never ever saw it. And I was like, okay, that's not where the game's going. So don't get married to it. This is a little different. They knew, but they could have, if they had come up with a different way to get in than what I had dropped in the game, we would have gone with that, and I would have skipped all this. So don't get married to your ideas, because the players are always good at coming up with something different. But that's enough of my ramble, I guess. I appreciate everybody that watches and comments on the videos. I love the comments, interacting with folks. I think it's great. And thanks for watching.